Foundation Course Kabbalah, Part 2, Lesson 32, Rabbi Michael-ben-Pesach, Portnaar. Abandoned by someone with evil intentions, and I said, "You cannot attend our classes." Who may not visit our course, and of course, in the next reincarnation, it is allowed again. A man who visits our course must find it valuable that he can do that, just as I find it valuable that I may give it to you. Together, attach value to what we do together, which is very important. If you do it with love, then your level is your own business. Do not run away from us intentionally. You must be in good faith. It's no ordinary course. You must donate and lovingly exercise to overcome yourself and to work on yourself. I used to be quite desperate, but I could not find it. I knew that there was an instruction. When I was young and was in Jerusalem, they showed me a slum in an ordinary neighborhood and said, "There is an old man, you should go to him." A kind of home that didn't look good. It was not painted. I got there and there was an old Jew with a beard, a robust man. I looked at him. I've not even told my wife, but now it's an important moment. I looked at him and got goosebumps just by looking at that man. That is a Kabbalist, because as we have reverence for the Creator, so we must also respect the great Kabbalist. He was not to behold. He was tall and his face was inhuman, no smile on his face. I walked over to him and I said, "Rabbi, I want to learn from you." Without hearing a word from him, I had needed no words. I did feel him and he looked at me and did not answer. I said, "I'm not leaving here," and remained standing. He saw that I longed like I was about to die and that he could give me salvation. He saw that I was definitely disappointed in life, that I was dead inside while I was successful in business. I had found him in this stinking place. He spoke Yiddish, not Hebrew. He was silent. I started talking like someone begging to save him. That was my attitude towards him. Then he told me that 1, 3, 4 times a week should come to him. And he also said that each session lasted 3 hours and for the duration of about 2 months. He said I had $50 per hour to pay. He was not even dressed. His shoes were torn or worn out, and he wore an old suit. Every great Kabbalist asked that at the time. It costed about $150 for a session of 3 hours. A great rabbi earns normally $300 per month. If during the lesson I asked a question about our world, then he suddenly stopped. I could not communicate with him, and he showed me that the lesson was over. But I had to pay. Sometimes after 3 quarters, but sometimes I was just wanted to ask something. No one knows his name. I did not even know who he was. He was poor. And these people are very big people who do not advertise. Everything that is popular has nothing spiritual. You have to imagine something that is spiritual and advertises and comes on the radio does nothing spiritual. Such a man is so high I felt myself as nothing. I felt as if a mountain was sitting opposite me. Maybe that's why last time regarding asking questions I reacted a little too hard. But we must learn to ask questions. We should not be afraid or avoid them when asking a question. First, take through the 7 points and internalize it. So you ask a question that is not about our world. So we are not always talking about that. I will give you a small example. After this little story, I will ask you what I said. I speak not a word about our world. I did not know what the name of that great Kabbalist was because I was never asked for it. It did not interest me. Also, the ones who had written the Talmud never left their names behind. Yes, later they found out, but it's not necessary. The soul lives with respect to the Creator, the eternity, and by whom is the last name given. Always the first name is important. The last name does not count in the upper world and says absolutely nothing, but the first name is relevant, and in the first name is also the destination. A scene like in a concentration camp. We see there a camp guard and a Jewish rabbi, a little weak, emaciated male. The camp guard came from the Ukraine, and many of them worked in the war with the Germans. They were even worse and far more brutal than the SS. The big guy, the camp guard, beats the rabbi, and the rabbi saw that he was tired. And the rabbi said, "Boy, take it easy. You need a little rest and refreshment. Then the executioner could not bear it, that despite his cruelty the old rabbi treated him with the same way as someone he loved, and as if nothing had happened. Then the camp executioner knelt before the old man and cried, and his heart shouted because he felt he was overcome. About what do I speak? Can anyone tell me? I speak of camp, but I absolutely do not mean a camp nor a certain rabbi and a camp guard. For history it was important, but not for me, and not for you here. What was it I have been talking about? As an example, we are talking about, sometimes I'll tell you about my youth to speak about the spiritual, which can help you somewhat. Also the Exodus from Egypt. There are plenty of people who study it. As I told you about the camp guard, that's exactly as the Torah speaks against us. The language of the people, but there is definitely something else meant in terms of power that brings man to the higher. The story I told you about the camp guard and that old rabbi should also bring us to the higher, because behind those characters are the strengths we have to reveal. A great rabbi once wrote stories, and then suddenly he could walk a distance of 300 kilometers in one night, and the people thought it was so. Christians often believe that Jesus walked on water. While there definitely is talked about something else, I speak often about the New Testament because many Christians sit here. I have absolutely no preference for faith. As we sit here doesn't matter for me. It has nothing to do with the spiritual state of someone. What I tell the class has nothing to do with our world. Try to find what I say, what those powers are. I try to bring you to a higher world, to the goal, and everything I tell you. Something else does not interest me. You must be on the verge of dying to get into such a room as I did. I had no choice. It came from above, that I was forced to go there. Not that you will be brought to a beautiful place. I am given this task to give this course. I had never thought of this. No inspiration also, not now. I do it because it is so. But where did I talk about when I was talking about the camp? Does anyone have an idea? You must know that everything must always lead to the higher goal of us. Also, your question should be that you are interested in how the operating system of the universe is put together. I want to experience that. I want to unite with it and experience how it feels. How can I come up higher so that I will be liberated? Who is liberated in our world? Give me an example. I mean, if you have money, you're addicted to money. Where did I talk about when I was talking about the camp guard and the old Jewish rabbi? One student says, the camp guard is the impure force, and the rabbi is the good force, and the guard beats to receive the good sparks of light. Another student says, the rabbi can only get higher through the camp guard. It is only his perception. Another student says, power of love is greater than the force of the impurity. I have often said that any other knowledge, learning in the world, does not come under the navel, cannot correct anything there. Man may be very religious and regularly go to synagogue or church, and everyone says he was so good, so sweet, and suddenly he does something terrible. And I also said that only Kabbalah, because that is the instruction given to man, can give access to the forces, as we have said, where Yesod is located, because there are 4 covenants. The covenants of the eyes, mouth, its own Sifrot. But now I'm not speaking in Sifrot, it's all Kabbalah. I can draw it in Sifrot, but it does not have to be, because we must first begin to experience it as forces, and then we can draw it. Otherwise we can draw like others, but we feel nothing. And the third is of heart, and the fourth Yesod is between the legs, not the organ itself. But everything is connected. The organ is the reflection of the external embodiment where those forces reside. Last time I said that there is a certain sin, and it seems a piece of cake, but that sin is vastly larger and overwhelming, seen from above, from the perspective of our spiritual work, than all in Torah that is forbidden. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, etc. But what I now will tell you is 1,000,000 times greater than everything that's in the Torah. And last time I said that I will not tell, perhaps in another incarnation, because I was afraid to tell you. I heard through the kind of questions last time that you were talking about our world. And if I then speak about the greatest sin and where the main remedies against everything, and where life and death is, and where man is to correct himself, be observant, then he will get life in himself. And all the sins he committed in his youth, he will then be able to correct. And not because he simply says that all his sins are forgiven by someone. No. What I'm going to tell you now is very important. It's life or death. You can learn that nowhere, not in any course. But I heard in the first part of the lesson that you do hear the spiritual. The only thing is, we have set ourselves for the spiritual a little by this story. And now I want to ask you to again and again set yourself in the spiritual, that you are convinced that I speak no word of our world, while, of course, it has to do with certain actions in our world. But I mean only the effects of what we do here on earth from one sin we commit here, and that has the highest impact. And there is the stone of stumbling of all of our salvation. The only thing is, try not to see it lightheadedly, because if you tell it to the man in our world, then he finds it ridiculous, because it is ridiculous according to the ideas of our time. It would be perceived as medieval. Do not try to do that. If your life is dear to you and you want all the sins you yet commit, even in this context, what I'm going to tell you to be cleaned, not simply by have faith and your sins are forgiven. Of course, no one understands those words. What I will tell you now, and I'll also gradually give you the instrument to correct it. Listen well. Is everyone willing to hear? Because I'm here to tell you a secret, not to teach a history. Listen carefully. I think you are mature enough to hear this. There's a sin that all of us mostly commit in our childhood, especially by ignorance, by drifts. Of course, no one can give us advice not to do that. Does not matter. But, a deep sigh, Michael says he feels inward defense to tell this and that he must overcome it. There is such a thing. I cannot force it. There's one sin, and that is wasting seed on earth. So not in a body, but just spilling it on the ground. Listen carefully. I'm not talking about perceptions of our world. If you want to have salvation, listen carefully. Try as a child to sit here and let your opinion remain outside, which you can recall later, your own opinion. Listen also to the forces of what I'm saying. What I want to tell you is that the sin that applies to both men and women, ejaculation, not in a partner, not from body in body. A woman does not have seed as a man, but a woman does make images of something and is going to provoke a sexual act without a man, and she then comes to orgasm. What has that to do with the spiritual? It is absolutely intrinsically connected to the most profound things, because there are 4 covenants that the Creator has made with man. So also the covenant of Yesod, but mankind could not or did not want to honor this covenant. Adam was the first who broke that covenant. When Adam was created, that means he was the first to recognize the Creator, because before him were many generations of people who were animalistic and did not recognize the Creator. Adam was the first to which the Creator had manifested himself. He was completely clean, and the first thing he did was that he began to do that, both spiritually and physically. He started to do his ejaculation, not in Hava, but just on earth. He has done that before. He did it the first time with Hava, so he sinned. What is that sin? Here is the greatest secret there is. If a man does his intercourse with a human, I'm not talking about men and women, because I do not want to talk about that, because it is very sensitive. If a man does not deposit his seed while being excited by himself and not by another human, then something happens. I want to talk just briefly about it, only point it out. If a man or a woman does that, a man goes through his mind to arouse himself by his act, his imagination, and without feminine element. We said that no action takes place here that does not correlate with something from above. Each intercourse, also physically, in which man has intercourse or by himself generates excitement and ejaculation, through it he creates a certain spirit, a certain force, because it goes from here upwards. There is nothing wrong in it, but he or she has no partner. It is all a product of his own imagination or so. No spirit or soul can come into this matter that surrounds us. The bearer of the matter in its pure form, it must always dress in a body. A higher may also dress in an invisible force that serves him as a body. There exists also witches and other things, absolutely, but in terms of forces. So, if someone arouses such a thing in himself and by fantasy or so will discharge his seed, or a woman who comes to orgasm without a partner, I'm talking about men or women, for that is not relevant. I don't want to talk about that because it's important what I'm talking about, not to do it outside the body. Seed is a living thing, not the seed itself, yes, that too, but the power that we do not see. If a man does it outside, not in a body, then the seed dies. We see that if we put a seed in the ground, then the seed rots and there will be a tree or something else. That means there was strength in the seed, also here, except for the physical strength in that emulsion, very high. Human. Then the spirit that comes free through this, I have no words for it, because the man is going to get excited. It's not just physical, and that goes up. At that time, the executioner, the impure force that also exists in the world, formed to bring a man to the higher, a female element thereof is called Lilith. She sees a chance to give that seed a body. Let's say the witch of all witches. Lilith, the female impure force. There is Ze'ah, a male good force, and Malchut, a female good force. Similarly, there are impure forces that are male and female partners. All these four worlds that exist, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, so too there exist four worlds of impure forces. I have never told that. So opposite what exists, we know that the Creator created that compared to that, otherwise we would be like angels, and that is not so. We must now always choose between the good and evil forces. They both have a tremendous appeal, and we have to choose until we receive such power, correct us, so we're going to draw more from the good than the impure forces remain underneath us. There is an evil force, male, king of impure forces, Zeir Anpin also. It does have a certain name, but I call it not that name. I call only like my teacher did. We cannot pronounce that name, because then we bring that power in the world. And the female power is a partner. Once a man dumps his seed without partner, then the Lilith, the female power of impure forces, gives immediately a body to that spirit that comes out, and she will envelop him, and it comes back to the human. So therein is that spirit, and enveloped by the impure power, and that comes to you, yourself, and that will live in you, and you're going to wear that. Who among us has not done that as a child, as a teenager? Who has not sinned there? Both women and men. And that brings death. It brought death to Adam and Chava. And in every generation it brings us death. I'm a grown man and I am already aware of it, but I might also have done that in my youth. What is the correction? Through it, even if a woman does that, when she comes to orgasm, it is not just physical. We think it is only physical, but that is not so. We think everything is material, but that is not so. If you go to a psychiatrist who deals only with matter or with emotions, that is exactly the same, just a higher form of matter. It has nothing to do with the soul. So, in closure, that is the problem. Because with the spirit that is in there is nothing wrong, but the envelope. And that continues to live in man. You can correct yourself so much, but you cannot correct that. And then man may go to church or something, or be president of the most powerful country in the world, but when an opportunity arises, then he's sold. For his yesod is not corrected. He began to sin against the Creator before he was president. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about? Step by step, here is the core. A student now wants to ask a question of Michael and says, now, when I feel that you can say something about the higher, I would like to give you the word. But now you're going to break with your beautiful earthly mind and what I said about the spiritual. By your clever mind, you're going to break that. You're absolutely right, 100% more than me. But I'm talking about the spiritual, something you have not even tasted. So the impure force makes the little shells. And all you have done with this sin, you keep wearing. That is one thing to do that both for men and women. Thereby the evil is created in man. That is the evil that is built up in man, is built physically. It is a sheath around certain forces, and you have to wear your whole life until your last breath, while you no longer know how it happened. What should you do? You keep wearing it. It's your death, and it lingers until the next generation and beyond. So therefore you create absolute evil in yourself. There also is a variation of this sin, which has good and evil in itself. And that's more or less correctable. Take this in yourself. Do not try to understand it with your mind, because that is impossible. Even the greatest earthly wise man, one cannot understand it with his mind. What I'm now telling you, I'll tell you so that you can stop with certain things and be cautious, because that will give you such a kick in your work, in your progress, if you listen to that, because otherwise you continue to the end of days with your studies. But if you do not comply with it, then nothing will help you. You can take classes, and of course you will try to get there, but try to remember what I tell you. This is not told in the American English Club, nor in Israel by Rav Lightman. He knows about it, but he doesn't tell it. He says that everyone should find it out by himself. But you cannot come to the sources, the secrets that are behind hundreds of thousands of locks. Here we cannot ask questions yet. Here, not yet. Just listen. The second sin is a variation on the first sin. It is said that this sin surpasses all what is in the Torah. It surpasses thou shalt not kill. It surpasses the genocide preparators. So if you're thinking about it light-headed, or that you with your earthly mind can reason it out, then you hear for nothing. The variation of this sin, there is good and evil in it, and it is more or less correctable. Of course, it is also possible to correct the first one. I will tell you how that goes. If your life is dear to you, listen to what I say. I do not want to force anything, but I want to tell you now, and what's in there is so locked that no one knows, no one suspects it. Step by step, I'll let you, the source where I read it. Also there you need to have access to. It does not interest our rabbis. Dealing with other people, that interests them. The second variation, I'm now talking about men or women, it does not matter, but I'm talking about men. While a man has intercourse and does not pay attention and releases part of the seed and does not wait until the last drop is out in the body of another, so that not a drop falls to the ground, because sometimes a man does it and then he will lie down while the seed has not been dropped until the last drop, where it is needed. So, stay lying on your stomach until the last drop is there. It should be. And not only the seed, but also the moisture itself. Also with that, you must be observant. I talk about absolutely spiritual things, 100% spiritual. Go and look at the book of the American English Club or something. You cannot find it because it's not commercial. It generates nothing. And here's the key to your success or not. But it is less sin when it is good and evil, as it is most part of you did well, and it is correctable. How can man with his sins in this area? We have said that this is stronger than anything, stronger than genocide. I cannot point out more strongly how important this is. If you think it is childish, it's medieval because you study in college, naturally your earthly sense thinks so. But be very careful, because there are the finest things in terms of forces, because we said that Yesod is the wildest place inside in terms of power, which man needs to correct. Man cannot cope with it, because he does not pay attention there. So, what is the correction of that? The correction is, of course, you have to pay attention. It should always move from body to body without dropping, because even oral sex, there's also moisture coming out, and you have to be careful there. oral sex, there's nothing wrong. Of course, that's not on the agenda, because how can you praise the Creator with your mouth when you use your tongue for something beastly? But I do not talk about that, because I now talk about the seed discharge and what a woman does on her way to achieve satisfaction. Masturbation, that's the word. Remember, genocide is far less severe than an act of masturbation. In the sense that you come that way to orgasm, everyone hears what I say. How do we come to correction? Of course, we should not do it. What matters? In order not to lose moisture. Of course, a man at night can have pollution, both men and women. And of course, you have to be careful. See for yourself how to be vigilant. So do not look at porn, because that unconsciously in your night sleep, then you get in your sleep wet dreams, and that is really bad. It's worse than genocide, worse than the Second World War. Over 6 million Jews and 20 million Russians were slain. Much worse, because that can be corrected, but your personal fulfillment is much higher than all there is. Everyone hears what I say. We're going to work on it. If it happens at night and you could not avoid it, then you should pray. Prayer is prayer is what you do from the inside. The best you can achieve from within. You should be attached to the highest. There, you should scream from inside and desire for purification. Then it comes from above, from Abba and Ima, father and mother. There at Arich Anpin, slightly above Abba and Ima, there's a place where there is no damage. And therefrom comes light that breaks those casings which are formed by your sin. It is important for the not kosher casings which are formed as a result of your act, the ejaculation out of their body. When the light comes from above, you have to desire for that. And the more you desire, the more the light can break what you have sinned. Breaking those casings that are made by your intentional and unintentional acts, because if you have that at night, it's not intentional, but if you have before you go to bed, eat very sharp food with many eggs, and so you ask for it. I eat from 3 o'clock in the afternoon, no more eggs, also no mayonnaise. I also am man. In the evening, you should not eat. Later we will talk about it. If it happens, when it should not be intentional. Because if it is intentional, then it's 100% evil. And that takes away our life. That takes away your life. And I hope you understand. If you learn that, to work with this sin, and who does not sin in this sin, then you go really fast forward. Then you don't need those books. It is as chemotherapy, those beams which only break the malignant cells. And one of the reasons those malignant cells come into existence is this sin. I don't want to talk about our world, because then we start thinking medieval. He has cancer, he has earned it himself, you should not do that. I absolutely do not mean that. We assume that we do not intentionally do it anymore. If it unintentionally happens, we need to do inside sincere repentance, to the highest that you can reach with screaming inside. And the more you can do that, raise it in yourself, the more antibodies those casings can be broken. If I do a bit, the ones of yesterday can be addressed, and if I do it more strongly, do more and more intense, more often, then can also those of 2 years ago be addressed. And if I do it as much as I can when I know there resides dead or alive, then it is also addressed from my adolescence, when I started playing, when I was looking for just trying to feel it. And who doesn't do that? It starts in the nursery. In the nursery, they're already playing with their genitals. Everybody knows what I mean. So you should know that you still need to correct these things. Those sins you committed when you were a child, thereby you come indeed to resurrection from the dead. It's nothing else. The prophet Yeshua, Jesus, has done nothing else. They all had built fantasies, all kinds of palaces, but not that. Nobody talks about that. They become priests, and with the Jews, rabbis, but they do not touch. Only a prophet can talk about it. I have the greatest teacher of all time, Ari, and I've reached everywhere because I've searched everywhere because I wanted to make myself clean. I've been all over the world with all great rabbis, and they said, forget it. go and learn Talmud. Go and learn the laws. I said, but how? I want to touch that place where I began to sin. Why so? I did not know why, and now I learned that there is a spiritual law whereby one can correct himself only when one comes in his prayer to the root of the sin. Because in the root of the sin there is also the healing from the sin, and Yesod is very low. And the lower the force is, the stronger the light must be, that is indeed to correct it. Suppose you correct that, then you will receive the highest light that is possible. If you pay attention to your Yesod and correct it. Why so? If it's only idea, then it's only the head, eyes, chokhmah, and then you can only reflect a little. So little correction, short light, you will receive. Is it in your mouth? Then you already have a higher reflectivity. And when light, temptation comes in your heart, and you'll reflect it, it's even stronger. And when it is in Yesod, then the light comes toward it, and afterwards you can receive the highest light. Therefore it is written that it is the stone of stumbling, but man could not understand that. Why am I telling you this? I have to tell it because we, this generation, are ready for this. We who are sitting here can already deal with this, and we must also engage. We engage with it if we want to see salvation. What is salvation? Everything is broken up by the highlight, Arich Anpin. You should not think where the power of Arich Anpin is. You must surrender your inner self to that higher power, to request. Require the higher that you want to correct it. All you have done in that area, that you want the light that comes at you, that it breaks like chemotherapy, it breaks all the antibodies of what I've done by these sins, and corrects it. And no longer do that. Go do something else. Go play football. Think about it. Not lightheaded. This is Kabbalah, and not those drawings and stuff. Of course, we will also learn that, but I would only go further with it if we all work hard on ourselves. Because then the drawings will be as games for us. Because then we already know what it is about. In this regard, let from the inside arise questions, and work on those questions for yourself. Ask those questions for the time being only to the higher power and not to me. Because everything you will ask me, you ask only by your earthly sense. Everyone understands this. It's not about what situation you're in, whether you're married or you have a girlfriend or you have any other relationship. Did I say anything about that? However, in the body, then you let the unclean forces, those casings, not be formed. What is that? Ask me not. Many variables we cannot yet deal with. But do that. I had to go through many thousands of pages and much misery to find those things. There are things that I will tell you, secrets, step by step.